If you really deeply understand the truth that people are not ready to buy the moment you're talking to them, or you cannot expect that they're ready to buy right now, you need to optimize for memorable impact, right? You have to unlearn the old way. I'm not saying that you don't have to really leave it all behind. Just for a moment, just forget about it and learn the new way.
What are some of the metrics that you find yourself? And I know it might not apply to everyone, but just to give people an example of what is a kind of metric that you could use to judge that kind of mental availability.
When I was discovering my voice, I was really focused on the pain. I think this is the most important thing because that's always going to be with you and that's not going to change. Optimize for that. Just find your villain, find your enemy.
I think the time lag in itself is not the enemy because it's part of the marketing process. People are impatient and people expect that marketing is a click of a button. If I click this button, then I get an MQL or a lead or whatever, money or something like that.
Human brains are just super lazy. So they're just going to go for the first thing that comes to mind and it has a connection with a specific category.
If you would start tomorrow all over, right, knowing what you know now, but not having done your current solo project, like if you're somebody who's starting for the first time ever, their first solo venture, what's the first thing you would do? Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of our podcast. Today, I have Joliene as my co-host, and we have Justyna Ciecierska as our guest. How did I do on the pronunciation?
Perfect. You did it.
There we go. Perfect. Justyna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
For context, we have today an awesome event. I mean, not today if you're listening to this, but today, day of recording. And we're going to be talking about thought leadership. We're going to have Justyna as one of the speakers. Our very own Tobias Leach is going to be I don't think Toby's going to be really happy that I accidentally called him Tobias Leach instead of Leach. Toby Leach will be one of our speakers. And we have Maxime Poulsen, who's coming all the way from Paris to speak with us. And I think that theme of thought leadership is something we're going to be touching upon as we go. We're going to start with our usual go-to question. Starting question is, what is your origin story? Feel free to go back as far as you like. How did you get to where you are today?
How did I get to where I am? So I think I mentioned that in one of my latest posts on LinkedIn that I came into marketing through the back door. And what I mean by that is, I think like most of us, I started as a channel operator, right? And that means that I was just doing like, the checklist marketing. So everybody wanted to do blog posts. I read blog posts. I wrote blog posts. Somebody wanted me to set up an email automation. I did that, right? So that's how I started. But as my career progressed, I started asking more and more questions. And then I ended up being head of growth. And that meant that I had to be strategic, right? And that was the moment when I realized something is off, because the strategy was always kind of predefined, right? And that was just generate MQLs, just generate leads. And that was like everything that every marketer did. So, and that, like, the more I thought about that, the less sense it made to me. But I just went on with it because that was, I was judged by these metrics, MQLs, leads, whatever. And so, at one point, so I was just doing that by day, but researching and following that instinct of there's something wrong. It cannot be that we are growing companies like that. It cannot be that we're scaling companies like that. So as I was digging into this, I actually decided to go solo because I found this topic very, very fascinating. And I didn't want to spend more time, going into that direction that wasn't really feeling right. So I went solo and I started working with clients and explaining to them a bit like how marketing really works, Because I always had this feeling since I started, like we're doing marketers like we're not marketing to humans really, right? And that kind of was always with me. So I figured, okay, I'm working with clients and I'm trying to explain to them like, okay, you're running these ads, but think about it. There's humans on the other side. What do they feel? What is their context? How do they, what is the message that you want to leave there, And I try to make people think before we do all the things that we were told to do. And just when I was talking to one of my clients in a meeting, I just blasted like, hey, like marketing is like this. You meet people and you cannot sell to them because you don't know if they're ready to buy. So you kind of have to build this marketing waiting room in their minds so that they remember you when they're ready to buy. And at that moment, and this guy, he didn't have any marketing background. He knew nothing about marketing, but at that moment, the light bulb above his head was so huge. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I have it. I did find a perfect term to describe the marketing time lag, and that's a perfect way in to grab attention of these business leaders and make them pay attention to brand marketing. So I started talking about this on LinkedIn, and that became the movement. And more people started talking about this and tagging me. And it was like really like, from one day to another, it just went viral. People started talking about this, tagging me. I was like, I cannot believe that this is happening. It's just like that. It just happens. So, that's where I am today. I'm following that instinct still, doing more research, looking into how brand really improves effectiveness of our marketing efforts. Does funnel really exist? Do MQLs really matter? These are the things that I'm talking about and I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. That also comes through when you talk and when we see all the stuff that you do. You create a lot of content. You do a lot of thought leadership yourself. You built your career as kind of an in-house marketer, and you said, you started kind of that. What did you call it? A checkbox marketer, or the covering the bases. I think we all started there at some point, and then you became more of a growth manager, then a head of growth in an ed tech company, and then you went solo, right? You're a solopreneur now. And your business, I guess, is this marketing waiting room, right? Like the I don't know if that's only the term of the productized package of what you deliver, or is that also the name of your business? Tell me more about this. Like, what can people expect if they hire you to build a marketing waiting room?
That's a very good question. And I've been trying to answer this for a while because I've been pivoting, I don't know. I've been like really changing direction slightly since I came up with this term. And in the beginning was a framework. And I've been testing this framework with my clients. And then I came to this idea of community, because I thought there are so many marketers out there that feel the same way I did when I was kind of forced to generate leads, and I was judged by MQLs. So then I came up with this idea of community, which was like a subscription model, and then I also started working on a productized. How do I put this? Like digital products or cohort courses. So I had a lot of like different directions. I was super excited about everything, but I had to choose. So I started with just working with clients, and I don't have a package like super defined just yet, but what I do with clients is I start with their brand story, because that is the most important thing. Because if you think about this, if you really deeply understand the truth that people are not ready to buy, or the moment you're talking to them, or you cannot expect that they're ready to buy right now, there is time lag. You need to optimize for memorable impact, right? And to be memorable, you really need to have this message very, very clear so that people, so it's easy to understand and it's easy to remember, right? So we always work first with brand story. And that story involves the hero. So that is your client or customer who's struggling with something. With a villain. So there's a villain, very clear villain, hero, villain, and they're fighting because, hero, if the villain exists, then the hero cannot achieve what they want to achieve. So they have to defeat the villain, and your brand and your product is the guide to the hero. So you're not the hero. You're never the hero of any story. And that is the most important thing, because when we look at brands, they tend to talk about themselves, not about the actual customer, right? So I always try to twist the story in a way that there is a hero, and that is your customer, and you're the guide, and you provide the steps to defeat the villain. And that gives us a very good framework for literally everything, because that informs our strategy, that informs our content creation, that informs any advertising that you create, everything. That's the starting point, right? And then we try to define like the first market that we're going to go for. So the segment, right? So who are the buyers that are most likely to buy from you based on their behavioral criteria or whatever, right? And then that's where the creative part starts. That's where we think about, okay, where do we have a chance to grab the attention of these people with this message that we have? How can we tell that story in many different ways, in many different channels, in many different formats. And so, yeah, that's mostly like really creative, non-framework, non-playbook, very fun marketing that everybody wants to do, but they can't do because there's funnel and MQLs.
How do you manage that? Because, I think in that sense, we're also work with clients. And of course, you have that short-term expectation versus the long-term gain. How do you manage that with clients? Because you're telling them also a story about the waiting room. How does that work? How do you manage those expectations? Because in the end, they also, of course, hire you to get more MQLs. So it's always that, or at least they want to grow their business in essence.
And if I can add to that, what would you recommend? How do you handle it? And what would you recommend to, let's say, an internal marketer who wants to shift away from that very short-sighted, pure lead gen focus? How do you do it, as Joliene says, and how would you recommend people do that to their managers?
Yeah. How do I do this? To be honest, I don't have much problems. I don't have I think the thing here is that my clients want to work with me because they see they share the same philosophy. Yeah. They know what I'm talking about. They really understand the game, and there's no question about whether whether it's the right way or the wrong way. We agree. This is the way. This is the game. We're playing the game of planting memories, the right memories, so that they're activated at the right time. But also, I understand that, there's this short-term sort of element to that. And the thing is that I'm not sure if I really like this long and short-term terminology, because it's kind of misleading, because it all happens at the same time.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and I think this is the shortest way to really get attention to this, is to say, look, it's a fact. You reach people, you cannot expect that they're going to buy from you right away. So you need to make a memorable impact on them. And plus, of course, trust, credibility, familiarity, all kinds of things have impact here. That's brand marketing. Once you start doing this, and I'm not saying that you have to do this for years to see effects. Once you start doing this for a month, 2, 3 months, you already will see effects in all the other areas of marketing. So if you're sales led, your sales teams are going to have much easier task of closing deals. There is no pressure to give away discounts. There's no, everything becomes easier because you're already pre-sold. Your brand is your silent salesperson. So I never had a problem. I never had to defend that. So I don't know how that works nowadays. I'm not sure how stubborn businesses are nowadays. Back in the days when I was full-time, I was already in that system, and I didn't have the ammunition and the words to explain that. But once I stepped out of it and I started articulating that to the world just gravitates toward me, and I don't have to explain that. And I think that's also a case for brand marketing.
Yeah. You put your brand out there, it attracts people who align with your thought process. I guess that's a big challenge when you're an internal marketer, right? So some people listening will be in a company and they'll be like, I want to do the same stuff that Justyna does. How do I get the buy-in?
Yeah.
I guess, we had this conversation with Diane recently, Diane Wiridu. It was the same thing. As externals, we have this innate advantage that people have to pay to bring us in.
Yeah.
So they have to have some level of conviction. You always have a little bit more credibility at the beginning, maybe not over long periods of time. But I think one of the big problems is companies really underestimate their in-house people.
That is
put a lot of trust into externals. And so I don't know if you have a specific tip for people listening, but I can imagine it's challenging.
Yeah. So actually, I've literally this week, I launched a training, Escape the MQL Trap. And in that training, I will be explaining a little bit more about how to bring it to leadership. And spoiler alert, it's not going to be one conversation. It's you're going to have to bring this story in many different ways on many different occasions. But the first thing is to unlearn. You have to unlearn the old way. I'm not saying that you don't have to really leave it all behind. Just for a moment, just forget about it and learn the new way. And the new way is just very simple. Create memorable impacts and build physical availability. So make it easy to remember you and make it easy to buy from you, right? And make it easy to remember. I know that sounds fluffy and it sounds like, oh, but can we like open brains of people and just see how much of this room we have there? No, there are metrics that help you do that. But I don't want to get into these metrics specifically, and I don't want to give like, any specific examples here, because that steers away from what the story really is. But basically, there are metrics that help you, proxy metrics that help you measure mental availability. And but first, you need to make sure that your business leadership understands the story of what it means to build mental and physical availability. So being easy to remember and being easy to buy. And then really understand the implications of that. And then really you can have this conversation of, okay, so that's how we're going to measure that. And that's our first idea of how we're going to test it, right?
It's internal storytelling, right?
Exactly.
It's the same. Actually, the marketing waiting room, you can also apply that to how you bring it to your leadership, in my opinion, because you need to tell them a story with a hero and a villain.
Yes.
And you can almost apply your methodology or framework or whatever you want to call it onto your leadership, because you're also telling them a story.
Exactly. And sorry, I just want to say one thing here. I'm really happy that you dig the importance of storytelling here. And, I created my brand story, the marketing waiting room. And I use actually ChatGPT to adjust the story for every context. So, I think this is also part of my training, where I help marketers really create those stories and bring them to the table in a way that it's not like, oh, just another marketer telling me that we have to build brand awareness and, do crafts and arts and stuff.
So I completely understand and agree where you're coming from, is that if you go into the discussion around how do you measure this and how do you do this, like you're going away from the core, which is first you need to be bought in on the principle, right? This principle of, and you said it, I always say, brand is a force multiplier, right? Yeah. It means more people will click your Google ads. So this is a line I like to use because I like to contextualize it in the things that a lot of founders or managers or commercial leaders, they have these things in their head that's tangible, right? Outbound sales is tangible and Google ads is tangible. Landing page conversion to demo is tangible. And you say, well, more people will click that Google ad and more people will spend time on your website and more people will click that demo sign up. More people, when they do a free trial, will actually give you the time of day. If the user experience is not ideal or if the product tour is not clear, they will still give it a go because they're excited about how you think about things and how your company thinks about things. So they want to try this product. Like we've all tried products that were kind of hard to use and we just wanted to give it that chance because we kind of like the brand. And we've all kind of abandoned products that were quite easy to use just because we didn't care. I am still going to press though. What are some of the metrics that you find yourself? And I know it might not apply to everyone, but just to give people an example of what is a kind of metric that you could use to judge that kind of mental availability.
So one of the easiest metrics to track is brand search. Right. So when people are exposed to your brand and there is a big chance that you're going to hit with your messaging, you're going to hit a lot of people who are in market, a lot of people. You're going to hit some people that are in market. And if you've done a good job, explaining what you do and really pinning that pain point, that is, pain that is urgent, then they're going to look for you, right? There's going to be more people talking about your brand and on social media as well. And I, for example, recently I'm in a mastermind group on LinkedIn, and very tangible example. Girls were talking about like, okay, so which software are we going to use in 2025? But because we're going to expand our teams, blah blah, whatever. And they were like, everybody's talking about Clay. We have to do Clay, and like, exactly, everybody talks about Clay, but you don't even know what they're talking about. That just the fact that everybody's talking about it and that they're in a specific category is already a very tangible outcome. And, the more people talk about it, you can almost 100% sure say that people see it and they will buy from you, because human brains are just super lazy. So they're just going to go for the first thing that comes to mind and it has a connection with a specific category.
That's totally true. I have the same, like, I'm sold on why you need to build a strong brand. I know the theory, I know the practice, I'm a big believer in it. But when I hear clay all over the place, I still assume it's because they're really good. Like, I know if I think about it, it's probably because they put a lot of effort into content and brand. And I know that they do, right? You got Obeyed, you've got Scott Towsey, you got all these people who are building really great content and doing a lot of brand. But I still go like, oh, clay must be really good. And now I've used it now, so I know. But even when I didn't use it, I was recommending it. Like, oh, you should check out clay because that's what people are really excited about. So that's 100% true. But even I, as somebody who has seen behind the curtain and understands that that's a consequence of building a strong brand, I still, my first assumption is, well, everyone's talking about it, so it must be good. It's actually, I'd be curious to know how many people talking about clay have actually used the product successfully. That'd be an interesting one.
Word of mouth is still the most important factor in this. Always interesting. So maybe it's good to shift a little bit more towards the thought leadership. I think you're really starting to build, or not starting, you're building your own brand out there. So what's your take on content marketing? Like, how did you start? What was your journey?
So you're asking specifically the journey on LinkedIn, or?
You can make it broader, but I think a lot of people know you from LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So maybe start there.
So my journey started right after I decided to go solo. And I just started with, I had no plan. I really didn't have any plans. And I also wasn't really sure what was I going to do? What exactly am I going to sell? And so I just decided, okay, I'm going to follow, like I said, follow this instinct inside me, to follow the questions that I had about marketing. And I just started jotting down my thoughts. And and that just, I noticed that it really helped me clarify or unclutter my brain, my thoughts, my mind. And every post led to another, because you go and dig somewhere, and then you're uncovering all kinds of stuff, right? So in the beginning, I had no plan, and I don't think anybody should have a plan, because the plan is going to change. Like, the more you discover, the more you refine your direction. So I started talking about all kinds of stuff. But then I started digging more into, okay, so there's content, there is marketing waiting room. We have to be memorable, and to be memorable, you have to really be actually creative. And so that led me to exploring brand marketing and all kinds of stuff like that, right? And then I came across Professor Byron Sharp, and I read the book, How Brands Grow. And that just opened a lot of doors in my brain. And content is like, people try to put it into a framework, and maybe for brands, maybe that works. But when you're a personal brand, I don't think you should do that, because that limits your creativity, that limits your thinking. So I would say, if you're asking for advice, what to do, just do it simply. And your brain is going to take you places that you didn't know existed in your mind. And then you're going to find your own voice. You're going to find like those unique angles. But if you overthink it, it's going to be a little bit difficult, I think. I was overthinking that a lot. And the moment I just let myself go, it blew up.
Because for those listening who are not as familiar with you, like, the first time you see Justyna's brand, like, it's out there, right? It pops. And you had to make certain decisions there, right? So because what you see is, what I think is interesting, you really practice what you preach, in the sense that a lot of companies, let's take brand agencies, for example, right? And I think this is kind of the issue, that brand is this, like, building a strong brand is really crucial, but it's been kind of hijacked by a lot of fluffy exercises, making pillars and frameworks, like you say, for things that don't actually really move the needle, of making like internal vision statements that never actually get used, and then, debating tiny words. So I think a lot of fluffiness does exist in the brand space, but that doesn't mean that building a strong brand is fluffy. So you see a lot of these brand agencies that they all look kind of the same. And you see most companies these days, they look the same. Most logos look the same kind of icons, same kind of illustration style. Everyone's kind of copying each other. You've gone for something like very unique, which stands out, But I guess it's also kind of a scary choice because you've made strong choices, right? The colors, I think you have the profile picture with your hand in front of your face, right? Or you had, I don't know. Maybe,
I used to have it, yeah.
I don't know if you've changed it now very recently, but you made some good, strong choices. And strong choices will always polarize a bit, right? People will see something strong and go like, hey, I like it or I don't like it. In both cases, they'll remember it. What was that like, that making those kind of stronger choices in your brand, in your visuals? Was that a scary thing? Or was it like, how do you got to drop that? Because the same thing you said, like discover your voice. A lot of people are scared to discover their voice because they're like, okay, but what if my first 20 posts suck? What if my first 3 iterations suck? I think most people will remember that stuff. But how did you overcome, or did you have that fear? Because maybe you didn't. And how do you overcome that and really go like, okay, I'm willing to put myself out there, do something different, and I don't care if people like it or not.
Well, I do care.
People don't like it.
I do care. I'm just going to be honest. I do care too much, but I just try to tell myself, look, this is what's here is stronger than that. So I just try to, put it somewhere in the corner and just push publish, and I know it's very scary. And in those moments, you just have to ask yourself, do you want to be where you planned to be or not? Because that's the choice that you're making. If there is no other, if you want to be there, then you don't have a choice. You have to do this, right? And so if you have this drive, then this desire, then you're going to do it. And it's going to be tough. And I've had moments when I cried in the corner because I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Imposter syndrome, especially when you come across people that seem smarter on LinkedIn, and it might leave some, I don't know, criticism on your posts. But I would suggest that just take it as a lesson. You're learning something from other smarter people, and if you just try to be like, I don't agree with you, and I'm not going to listen to you from now on, that's a mistake, because that person offers you a different perspective and something a different way to look at something, and that might just be the trampoline for you to go to the next level. Yeah. So the bold choices, when I was discovering my voice, I was really focused on the pain. What is the pain? And tap into the pain that I had. Just like any good product story starts with, I had this pain, I solved this pain, now I'm selling this, right? That's what happened to me. And I think this is the most important thing, because that's always going to be with you, and that's not going to change, right? So optimize for that. Just find find your villain, find your enemy, basically that, and put it into words. And that's going to be difficult. It took me, I think, half a year to really, maybe a year even, to find the exact right words to describe the pain, especially when you're solving a pain or a latent need that is kind of like underneath the hidden problems. That is the most difficult part, but that's, I think, the most rewarding thing. If you do this, then people are like, holy shit, this is like, it's like you're reading my mind, and then they gravitate towards you. And that's how it works.
Yeah. If you would start tomorrow all over, right? Knowing what you know now, but not having done your current solo project. Like if you're somebody who's starting for the first time ever, their first solo venture, what's the first thing you would do?
Again, find your enemy. Just focus on finding that enemy. That is the most important thing, because that is the thing that is, if you have it nailed, then you have your positioning, then you can build your brand around this, then you can be known for this, then you'll be remembered, and that therefore you're going to be bought.
Who's your enemy?
My enemy is the marketing time lag. So this time where you meet your target audience, but you can't sell to them, and maybe they will buy in tomorrow or in a year or in a few weeks. That is a very, very freaking scary thing for marketers, because there's no control there, right? That's the enemy. But I actually try to make that your friend in the end. So I'm trying to fight this enemy. This enemy causes a lot of things that go wrong in marketing, and I just talk about these things.
All the leads that got away. Is
the time lag the enemy, or is the perspective on the timeline the enemy?
You could argue that the fact that you make it an enemy is your enemy. I think,
because I think we're all marketeers here, so I completely agree with you that I think the time lag in itself, in my opinion, is not the enemy, because it's part of the marketing process. But it's the people are impatient and people expect that marketing is a click of a button. And if I click this button, then I get an MQL or a lead or whatever, money or something like that. Whereas it's a storytelling and it's a process, and that takes time.
Yeah.
And I think maybe you disagree, but for me, the time like in itself is not the problem, but it's like how people perceive marketing is the problem, because they think it's I click a button and now people are going to buy my product.
Yeah. I think, the fact that people perceive that, yes, that is the underlying problem that I know, okay, this is what's happening, but the problem on the surface is the time lag, right? So that's the thing that keeps marketers up at night. And I agree with you.
I'm running my campaign, but I'm not getting anything out of it just yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I understand. I see what you mean by that. And I made a very deliberate choice because I think, just like you, it's not really the real enemy. And that's why I'm saying I'm trying to make it befriend that enemy. But the underlying problem is what you just said. It's just the way people view marketing. So
yeah. It's I think at the end of the day, you're always battling between, the reality of the situation is when you're doing marketing, like you say, 90% of those eyeballs are not ready to buy, right? And that's assuming you're targeting well, right? Which is a whole other problem. I guess in other companies, they're not even targeting the right people. But if you're targeting the right people, 90% of them are not ready to buy. The reality is, of course, there will come a point when they're ready to buy. That delay is a problem. And what you do with that delay, if you don't handle that delay well, that's also a problem. So I guess the two are not mutually exclusive in that sense. I want to touch a little bit upon mentorship, because I know you are a Whirl growth mentor. What role does mentorship play for you, either way, as a mentor or having a mentor? I don't know if you have a mentor, but what role do you think that plays? How valuable is that? How important is that for people to have a mentor?
I think it's extremely important because a mentor is a person who has been where you have been and is where you want to be, right? Or achieve what you want to achieve. And that person has been through a lot of things that you're experiencing now. And when you're on a journey as an entrepreneur, you know that there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of questioning yourself, whether am I going in the right direction? Because sometimes you're making choices that could be irreversible or could have effect very long down the line. And you're just very freaking scared to make decisions, right? And if you have that person who's been there and can tell you no, this is the right direction. I've been exactly through that situation, and here is what's going to happen. Then you can have this little pillow where you can land and okay, I'm in the right, I'm going in the right direction. So to me, that's what it means.
Yeah, I think that guidance is super valuable, because it's not just about the practical advice. It's just knowing that you're kind of on the right track. Because I know Growth Mentor obviously is a platform where you can go on, you can be connected, and that can be a transactional and non-transactional thing. I think there's some options there. I used to be on the platform. Maybe I'm technically still on there, but I haven't used it in a while. But how do you approach somebody if you want somebody to become a mentor? Let's say outside of a formal platform, right? Let's say there's just somebody specific where you go okay, this person is somebody I can really learn from. What's the right way to reach out to people like that? How do you get those people's attention? Because I guess people don't have that much time to dole out free advice.
So you mean somebody that you look up to and you want that person to be your mentor?
I mean, so what would somebody have to do if they wanted you to be a mentor? And people listening here, don't all do it at once. But what is the kind of thing that you would expect for you to be kind of interested in doing something like that?
That's a very good question. I think having a good story, I like to talk to people and help people who have a clear vision. They're clear, hey, I want to get somewhere. They have clarity how to get there, or they have clarity where they want to be, and I know exactly how to help them get there. Because if they don't, then that's just way too difficult for me. Because Like it's difficult to find out what the other person wants, right? So I feel like you first need to do a little bit of inner work to kind of understand like what is it that I really want? Yeah. And maybe it also, this clarity could be, hey, I really don't know what I want. Help me figure out what I want. That could also be a clear direction. But just knowing what you want is very important. Otherwise, it's going to go all over the place and you're going to be jumping around and not achieving anything. And that's just very frustrating.
Yeah, it all comes back to that personal story, your own brand story almost, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you telling a good story? Are you clear on what? I guess it also makes it easier for you to decide if it's worth helping them or if you can help them.
If I can help
right?
them, yeah.
Somebody comes out and says like, oh yeah, you seem kind of cool. Let's have like 20 calls. That's going to be a little bit, it's going to be a little bit hard to say yes to. But if somebody really has a story that you resonate with and you see yourself in them and you go like, oh, cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Shall we jump into our fixed questions?
Yes, let's do that. Cool. Let's start with them. They are, you can short answer, not too long, but otherwise we will have a discussion for the next hour, but it's not a yes or no. You can have a little bit more of a conversation. So what's a controversial opinion that you have?
That
you have a lot, so...
I have a lot, yeah. My latest one is obviously, the funnel doesn't exist. There is no MOFU, there is no MQLs.
Yes, we also have we dive into a LinkedIn post, which is especially one of those. So let's keep that discussion for a little bit later. But maybe slightly more about like, especially I'm interested about your MQLs. Like, why do you think, why shouldn't they exist? Because
MQLs do not predict revenue. Because MQLs do not predict that somebody's going to buy from you, that you're going to sell. So that's a lost battle, I would say.
I've never been a fan. I've never used MQLs in my entire career. I've used MQLs once.
I had to.
Never believed in MQLs.
What's your, sounds a bit hard, but what's your biggest fuck up or like learning that you have where you were like, oh, that was a big one, but it hurt a bit?
Oh, which one is the biggest? I think...
Or the one that you would like to share.
Yeah, so there is one. One of my first clients, when I just went solo, I had a client and this client said, could you please help me with my team? Because I just fired my marketing director. And I just don't know what to do. I have like a couple of people in my team and I don't know what they're doing, so could you help me? So I just went in there and I was already in the bad position because they were looking at me as the enemy, kind of. And the atmosphere was not so great. So then I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I did something wrong here. Let me just write something about my thoughts on LinkedIn. So I did that. And then the next day the client called me and said, you shouldn't have done that. They didn't like it. And I had to go, and the next day I had a meeting with them, planned already before, and they just didn't want to talk to me. And in that meeting, finally, we kind of met, and it was just really, really aggressive. And people just left, in furious. Not because I said what I said. That was kind of like I came there because. With that background of, okay, I said something bad. I brought them cookies, but that didn't fix anything. So everything that we said in that meeting was just like not productive at all. And I lost the client, not because of that, but they were like, okay, yeah, let's just not do it,
Because of the post itself.
Well, not the post, but there was a lot of friction in the team. And
there's a reason the manager left as well, right? Or was let go or something in between.
Yeah. So that post didn't help, certainly. But yeah, the team was not ready for external person building waiting rooms with them,
Kudos, because that's a really good one. I think a lot of people would not have shared it. So I think that's always good. I think we all have those kind of situations. Like politics are complex, internal team dynamics are complex.
Yeah.
And if you're an external coming in, especially you don't know what the background is of the previous person being let go, that's a messy hotbed to get into.
Definitely.
But yeah, that's a cool one.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, and if they hear this right now, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do anything bad. So, yeah.
Shit happens. People take their jobs seriously.
Sometimes there's already oil on the fire and you can't do anything right at that point anymore. Currently, who do you learn from the most?
There's a lot of people. I learn, first of all, a ton from my husband. We just were together 24/7, and he's working. He's a head of data at GoBooney.
My sister works at GoBooney.
Right. Yeah. So he helps me a lot with those debates on LinkedIn. He teaches me how to have a good debate. I learned a lot from Professor Byron Sharp, Jenny Romaniuk, about all kinds of brand-related metrics, Dale Harrison, and
Nice.
Dale's all over my feed these days.
He's everywhere. Yeah.
Last but not least, what's your favorite tool for 2024 or starting 2025 almost?
Just CCG GPT. That's I cannot live without it.
I can imagine that we wrote theses and everything in marketing without chat.
Yeah, students have it easy these days.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Moving on to the next segment, we have this thing where we kind of do the face palm, and well, I say kind of, why am I? We do a face palm and a kudos for, I always say for the week, although this podcast is sometimes we record 4 in a week and sometimes 1 in a couple of weeks, but essentially something recently that caught our attention, something cool that deserves kind of like a shout out and a kudos, and something kind of lame where we go, hey, that's not cool. You don't have to name anyone by name if you don't want to. You are welcome to if it's a big, mean corporate brand. Guests first, because we don't like to, if we happen to have similar ones, I don't want to tread on your toes. So we'll start with you, Justy.
So I don't know if you're gonna know that, like, this is not a wild and wide LinkedIn thing, but when I posted about that there's no MOFU, there's no funnel, there's no nothing, there was Matt Georgeson. He was on this post all the time, replying to all freaking comments and trying to, convince people, like, you're not thinking straight here. This is the science. Here's the logic. So I would like to give him kudos for that, because he really helped me get fucked on of reach, first of all. And second of all, he's been doing God's work there.
Nice. And a facepalm?
And a facepalm. One facepalm moment was kind of like in a private conversation, but I see coming back a lot on LinkedIn, is the fact that marketers, and I really don't want to offend anybody here, but marketers need to learn how to think. And what I mean by that is that every marketer, by the end of each year, they're like, what is hot in 2025? What should we do? What is the best channel, right? This is the wrong approach. And that is the face bomb for me. I used to be like that. I know this, but start thinking, what are you doing? Why you're doing this?
Back to basics.
Back to basics. So I just want to, the message here is that just don't look at what others are doing, because they're doing something. Maybe they know, maybe they don't, but you are in your unique situation. You're in your unique position, and you have to adjust to that.
Yeah, I agree.
My turn?
Go for it.
I will start with facepalm. I know we're going to talk a little bit about the posts, and you recently has also done a post which stirred the internet as well, especially LinkedIn. I feel like people are bullying each other on LinkedIn. I feel like it's becoming a new Facebook or MSN Manager. Like I am on we're all professionals, and I feel people are really calling each other out, calling each other.
MSN is an old school.
I know for the people who are my age.
MSN Messenger.
But it's becoming bullying, and not of course, sometimes people take the wrong tone within a message, and then people respond to that, but stay respectful. And I was surprised with the people steering each other up to bully the other. I'm like, how old are we, right? We're not in high school anymore. Grow up. If you disagree with the post, you can say that, but keep it respectful. So that's my facepalm. It's just be normal and just focus on the content, not on the emotion, which is something.
Doe normaal.
Doe normaal, as we say in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Kudos. Maybe it's already been given, but I just want to give a kudos to Nobel, because
that was my kudos.
We're doing a great event today, and they gave us their office to actually host the event. So we're super excited. We have some really cool speakers and some great content there. So sorry for stealing it.
No, that's fine. So my kudos is also Nobel Recruitment. Thanks for hosting a podcast. We're partnering with them. We're working with them on a lot of cool stuff. So that's a big kudos. I also want to give a kudos to one of our clients, Hello Energy, who've just kind of launched their new pivot, we're very proud of like helping them with the positioning on that. And it's something very different. So really cool to see a company at that stage still make such big swings. So that's my kudos. 2 kudos is kudai. I don't know what the plural of kudos is. My facepalm. So this is a tricky one because you talked about Dale Harris and you talked about Mats, and I think they're both super smart guys, and I have a lot of respect for them. There's one thing I fundamentally disagree with them. I also commented on your post on the funnel. I do feel that we have in Dutch, you have this concept of mierenneuken, which is ant fucking. And I agree with you, Justy, that on the one hand, like we have this kind of like big split here, where on the one hand you have all these like trend hopping, like they're like kind of like keen puppy dogs for every latest tool, trick, hack, tactic, whatever. And that's not the right way to think about marketing. What I struggle with a little bit on the side of because there's people like these guys who are like super smart. They really, really know their stuff. But I do feel in the marketing sphere as a whole, there's a lot of semantic debate. Should we call it this or should we call it that? And I don't mean them in particular, but this is a debate I had, for example, with Dale, where he said, demand generation is not a thing because you can't create demand. And then, he makes a point, I make a point, he makes a point, I make a point. We get down and then we get down to the weeds of it. And basically what he calls demand creation, he defines it totally differently than what I would call demand generation, right? For me, demand generation is I solve my problem with this way, and they've convinced me to solve my problem in a different way. And they've generated demand for their solution. Whereas he defines demand creation as, unearthing a problem that didn't exist before. And that's just a completely different definition, but it's a semantic discussion at the end of the day. Or somebody going like, thought leadership as a concept, it's totally bullshit because, who am I to call myself a thought leader? Mm-hmm. And there's this question, we are marketers and we also offer marketing services. So we need to make a choice. Do we pick the word that's kind of associated with an old way of thinking? Do we call it lead generation? Because that kind of already boxes you in that kind of old box. Do we talk about demand generation, demand capture? Well, then we're kind of using all these far-fangled new words. If we create our new words, you're trying to reinvent the wheel. The truth is you cannot win. And I think there's like way too much emphasis. And by the way, we're going to talk about your post in a sec. I don't think that was about semantics. That was about buyer dynamics. But some of the debate in the comments was semantic. And I think we talk a lot about semantics. I mean, like, do we really care?
Marketeers.
Yeah, but I do think we spend too much time talking about semantics. And I think we spend more time talking about the fundamentals of how people buy, how people think, how human psychology, buyer psychology. I think those are the most interesting ones. Mm-hmm. So when I look at Dale and Mats, the most interesting things they post is rarely about the semantics. I mentioned them just because you mentioned them, but I see everyone's talking about semantics. I find myself talking about semantics. Sometimes I'm just like, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, do we actually care what we call this? Like, then you look at the sales guys in the sales world. They don't give a shit what you call it. You call it something new. They're like, we call it this now. Reminds me a little bit of politics, or sometimes the political parties that seem a little bit more reasonable, in my view, have way more infighting. And then the political parties with questionable opinions are just super aligned.
Well, I think marketers get more like, I don't know, they get quite offended quite quickly. Some, not all, but also what I saw with...
Wait, what do you mean by offended? I'm just kidding.
No, I saw it was something with posts, and you posted something recently that stirred the pot as well, especially with the more marketing fundamentalists, the more the research department of marketing, and they were really pissed off about what you...
Oh, they were really upset. Well, some people take their jobs too seriously.
I just find it weird that, like... In essence, we're all doing the same thing and we all believe in the same thing because it's all human behavior, human psychology, what we're doing, right? That's if you take it back. What message you present to whom at what moment. But we get so caught up in the details. I think that's, in my opinion,
I think it depends who your audience at the end of the day. I think a lot of the people talking about the semantics, their audience is other marketers, so they care about the correct truth. Whereas my audience is B2B founders, and I know how they think. When they see us debating over to call it this or that, they think, bunch of fucking idiots. Like, that's what they think. So we need to talk their language. Conscious of the time, I want to jump to the next one. We always pick out a LinkedIn post that we like to talk about.
I love this LinkedIn post.
So the post we've picked here is you reflecting on the previous post that you had made, which is you talked about how there's no such thing as middle of funnel, that basically, buyers are in one of two states. They're buying or they're not buying. And I agree with that. And you got a lot of response and a lot of debate. How did you experience that? How did that go?
Yeah, it was very funny because actually this post was literally copy paste from a comment that I wrote on Toby's post. And I got like shitloads of likes there. So I was like, oh, let me just post it, It was a Saturday morning. I didn't expect much. And then it just started flowing in, like people just, oh yeah, this makes sense. This is so true. But then also it came in like other people like, no, it's not true. Everybody started fighting. And it was fascinating to me. I think this post and the comments is an amazing source of, market research, like how people think about funnels, and that gave me a lot of information about like how marketers see that, why do they defend that, what's going on there, and I feed that into my brand story, I feed that into my narrative, I use that later, right? But yeah, a lot of people disagreed, and a lot of people talked themselves into like a corner, or a lot of people were like, just when they were defending that, they were just walking in circles. And that's also funny to see. But on the other hand, I understand what you said, that, a lot of people get really offended really quickly, or people get like really shitting on each other, bullying each other, And I must admit, I sometimes do that too, not intentionally, but because I'm like, so passionate that I'm just going to type something, and then sometimes I regret things. But yeah, it was a very, very fiery debate there.
And Mats is really good at that, by the way. Like if you argue back, even if he disagrees, you're like, that's a good argument, thanks.
Yeah.
But I disagree for these reasons.
Yeah.
So he's very respectful. I think that's really important. Yeah. And I think it's an interesting debate, right? I think a lot of people are questioning, over the last 10 years, a lot of frameworks and concepts have been built, even though a lot of the underlying principles haven't changed. And I think a lot of people are now questioning that.
There's always a new framework for a new year, I have the feeling. Yeah, it's just like
funnels stuck around for a pretty long time.
Flywheel.
I literally, if I go on my feed now, for sure, there's somebody going like, funnels are dead, and somebody saying, people who say funnels are dead are full of shit. Like these two opposite things. So it's a hot topic. Again, like, I think it's super interesting. I question whether like debating it to death, as some people did in the comments, including myself, was super valuable. But, it's interesting. It's good to challenge ourselves.
Yeah.
Last but not least,
we
rapid
have
fire.
Rapid fire questions.
This is just yes or no, or one answer. Let's start. Funnels, yes or no?
No.
More time on in market or out of market?
I don't know.
New markets versus well-established ones?
Depends.
What's your favorite?
New markets.
Okay. Solo entrepreneur or working with co-founders?
Sorry, again?
Solo entrepreneur or working with co-founders?
Solo.
Growth mentor or being a lecturer at the university?
Growth mentor.
One thing that can make your marketing efforts significantly better?
Keep it simple.
Consultancy or selling courses?
Consultancy.
Remote or hybrid?
Remote.
Okay, cool. That's it.
Justyna, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was
Appreciate having you on the
fun.
show.
Amazing.
And we're going to be asking you some very similar questions, but we're going to keep it fresh in about a couple of hours when everybody starts rolling in.
Awesome.
Anything you want to share with people before we go? Anything
you want to plug?
Anything you want to put out there? Anything you want to guide people towards?
If you want to do marketing the right way, or the way that you've always felt like was the right way, join my training, 22nd of January, Escape the MQL Trap. You can find more info on my website, marketingwaitingroom.com.
Perfect.
Nice.
Thank
Love
you
it.
very much.
Thank you.